right, friends. Well, as we transition into breaking down the lore, my seekers of lore, if you've been with us, and you'll know that we have spent several hours now trying to discover the secrets behind the ancients. They are a hard nut to crack. Their motivations, their intentions, whether or not they are good or evil. It's very plain to see that the ancients are a very complicated being. They're mysterious and perhaps quite self-centered. But tonight, we are going to take a deep dive into the possible origins and thoughts behind the design of the ancients, who we kind of think are based in evil at this point.
Or are they? Or are they? You know,
Or
Hard
are
to tell. Who do we trust? But if I may, lore page of statuary and symbolism. The statues within the temple were strange, indeed, yet were clearly of the culture that came before. Yet the likeness was peculiar. Each statue bearing a twin pair of arms and cleft down the middle, much like the spheres great and small. A division of the self, a representation of duality perhaps. In one of the statue's hands was a weapon, the other a familiar orb, outstretched. Perhaps it was a religious symbol. Or something to channel other forces perhaps. I found another skeleton, intact, but with a spear and armor, unlike the ones in the perimeter outside. A leader, or ruler perhaps? It had to be buried. It seemed more a guard of the stone coffer within the temple.
So that brings us to a lot of questions. I mean, that lore page, thank you, Champ. That lore page was covered in our lore lesson. And I think the biggest part of that is the duality that it speaks of. And the fact that when you look at the effigies, the statues that they had made in their own image by slave labor, they have a split face and 4 arms. But why?
I go back to, at first, my first thought when I saw this, I'm like, I don't know. And I'm still trying to figure it out.
There's so many questions.
I don't know. But the more and more I think about it, the more and more I see, especially after of statuary and symbolism, the lore page. It's a good reminder that this could be a representation. This, to me, I still believe that they lean towards evil. But I also believe that this representation could mean that they operate in both. To whether it's to accomplish a purpose, which we've seen with if you take architecture, if you bring that in, you for instance, the bridge we talk about in the Finn Weavers. Like bridge, it was to accomplish a purpose. To have these ancient guardians that are now protecting all their stuff that were their slaves in that time frame to build these things, again, to accomplish a purpose. So I see this as and I don't even know that I'm completely set on this, but I see this right now as a representation of good and evil, that there's 2 sides to a soul, there's 2 sides to a person, and they choose to operate in both to bring about their means to an end.
Yeah, fact. Go ahead, Sils.
I apologize. I think good and evil, I think, comes from place of reference or perspective. I think it's all relevant to that who decides to make the action or make those choices. Like if you go back in early narrative, it's what's called a diptych. A diptych is this form of writing where you always have one truth and one lie, and you play off of each other. I think both can be true. I think they're both good and bad. And I think that's what I hear y'all saying. And I don't think the story is ready to really commit to one or the other just yet. I do think they maybe had the best of intentions. Maybe. I don't know if we have any substance saying otherwise, but they might have had the best intentions to rule with fairness. But I think the corruption of power might have split them and might have created that diptych. And here we are, fast forward in this state where, again, they maybe have had the right intentions, corrupted by human nature, if they even are human.
Right.
Or corrupted by the Azoth itself.
That's
There
right.
you go.
Because it was like, this is a very interesting thought to think that, because I was almost sold that, as we're going to talk about in a second, that the ancients were designed after Greek mythology, which we are going to talk about here in a second. But the split face, absolutely, with what Jib said, that absolutely does remind me of the duality of man and the struggle that man has between good and evil. And you bring that back into a religious setting, and it's not necessarily easy to see the motivations of man, but could these motivations have echoed the same motivations of the ancients? They were just at a greater level of power. They could have gone either way, but that split down their face shows how easily they could go to one side or the other. You see what I'm saying? So it makes me think of it differently, this duality of the human.
My only argument against that is everything in Aeternum, when it is split, it shows a visible split. If you look at these ancients, these statues, they are pure. There is no damage to one side or the other. And for me to believe it was a duality, it would be like the helmet, right, of the conquistador. In the base game, the first image, you have the one side of the helmet that is clean and evilly red. With the Aeternum, that we've ciphered all of those things and we know what all of those things mean on that helmet, then the other side is corrupted. Even the top of it has changed. If you look at it, there's more of a peaceful side on the bright side and more of an evil side on the left. So I agree, it could be depicted that way, but I feel like in Aeternum, they tend to make that obvious. So maybe they're using that to hide it because the ancients are evil. Right? Maybe they're hiding their true image because they're making themselves look pure. I get what you're going, and I completely understand that. I'd never thought about it either, which brought that into my mind. Maybe they didn't want you to know that that's what the split is. So you would trust them wholly, see them as a pure God, and worship them so they could take your soul from you and make you a guardian.
I definitely wonder if they purposely made themselves out to be better than what they really were, for the purpose of worship and for the purpose of being referenced as a deity, and so that they could again accomplish what they wanted. Easier to enslave.
Yeah, optics. I mean, look, hell, look at the Branch Davidian cult. They did the same thing. You got David Koresh trying to make himself out to look like a prophet when he was a freaking demon.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think I got entrenched with the thinking of the Greek mythology, but there's one little piece that doesn't quite completely sell it for me. So when you think of ancient Greek mythology from our world, humans were first depicted as having 4 arms, 2 faces, and 4 legs. Well, now humans coincided with the gods, and the gods, because humans at the time were said to be, they were rumored to be in these legends, very powerful, and the gods considered them a threat. So because of this, the gods decided to band together and split the humans into 2 to punish them. Now this action split them in 2. The humans became what they look like today: 1 face, a male and a female, 2 arms, 2 legs. So they look the way that humans look now. But this splitting of them forever caused each other to look for the other half of their soul. And this is where the term soulmates is said to have originated in Greek mythology. Now, when you translate that into New World speak, into New World's lore, Isabella is rumored to have lost half of her soul. And she seeks a box, which was taken from her, that holds her other half.
You know, just quick side note. There's so much to Isabella outside of what you may see in a trailer where her eyes are glowing red. Like the regard that she had for the church, the regard and care that she had for the approval of those in royalty. You find that out when you're reading the lore. That aside, the box, remember when we first started, we had those conversations behind the scene. What's in that box? And we start
What's in the
listing all this
box?
stuff. We start breaking it down. We were
Just tell
breaking
us.
that trailer down. Yeah, right. I mean, we were breaking that thing down, and we're just like, "What's in that box? What's in the box?" And here we are.
Yeah.
Finding
Whatever
things
it was turned Thorpe into an asshole.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and
dude.
when you meet
Call me
him,
Bill
when you meet
Drake.
him in Expedition, he's really big asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
thing for me, with Isabella is, again, go find the lore pages, and you will see the depth of this character, because she has lore pages out there when she's whole, and she's looking for the heretic. She has lore pages when she's transformed, when she's taking it out on her crew that were left over. There is so much information, and when we get to her and her lore stuff, when we will get to her, it is going to blow your mind at the amount of information that is in this game about one
rad.
character. She's such a rad character, for sure.
She's deep.
You know, the cool thing I like about this, big shout out to K-Chat being my soulmate. But anyway, what I love about that is it's tied to our Greek mythology.
Yes.
Again, how many times you heard me say it? How do you get someone to connect with a game? Make it their world. First
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
They've made a game based off of all these different facets of our ancient history.
Yeah.
I love it. I know, fanboy, you're welcome, but I really enjoy it.
And this is what happened to me. I mean, like, I'm not kidding you, friends. You know, a lot of people know this. I came from 25 years of Elder Scrolls lore, and I loved it, and I know it very well, and it was a comfort zone, but it wasn't based on the real world. So to come into New World and see what they're basing it on, real world mythology, real world history, conquistadors, they actually happened. The Romans, they actually happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Ancient Greece actually happened. All of that stuff has gotten me so much more interested in our real world history
Yes. Oh man.
since I've been since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And like it's such a draw.
Yeah.
How smart is that? How smart is that?
Yeah.
How smart? I mean, I cannot wait to see where it goes. Like, I'm chomping at the bit. I know there are people that are, the game's, it does not suck. You suck. Sorry. I want to see where it goes. I just want to see where it goes, man. There's so many ways to go, right? I just want to see where it goes.
It's just the beginning. That's the best part. We're
Yes.
just starting. And it's 2 months in. There's so many layers. Bringing the real world in to this game. I'm legit reading literature from, I'm going back to like colonial era literature now. Like in just books from college, pulling these things out, reading this just to further engross myself in the mindset of those who were in the late 1600s and the great, the midnight era of exploration. It's
Right.
just like, so good.
Real quick, jump in. Do you remember who took the box
Thorpe.
of the soul we're talking?
Boy, we did.
I'm gonna give it a second. I'm gonna give it a second because I know this one.
Chat,
And
do you know who took the box?
Who took the box from Isabella?
Oh, okay. I don't want to spoil that.
Aha.
Well, we're definitely gonna spoil it because we're covering this next week.
It's not Thorpe.
No.
Just a little heads up there.
There's a very interesting character out there, friends. And if you're mid to late game, then yes, you have encountered this character. And we seem to think that there is a lot more to her than meets the eye.
Yeah.
And that character is Adiana Theron. She's the mistress of the wild. And she is out there doing good deeds with the dryads and the angry earth. And it is a very interesting story arc. But she admits to being party to taking the box from Isabella, which has the other half of Isabella's soul. And that is, I'd say that's probably about as far as we're going to go into it. We're going to cover more next week, but we're kind of entering the realm of spoilers unless you're like mid to late game, which at this point it's like, yeah, and we got to kind of hit this content eventually. So it adds a really, really good story arc into this whole thing. And I wanted to tie this into some of the other Greek mythology regarding the obelisks that are scattered throughout the lands. And Jibs, so in particular, because I know this one kind of interested you in particular, but what are those obelisks that are scattered across Aeternum named after?
Constellations.
Yeah. So Greek constellations, and there has to be a reason for it. Like, why would they be named after the real world constellations? Well, you have to kind of figure that they're named after those constellations in a world, in this parallel universe of the 17th century. If it's a parallel universe to our own, then those stars that are in the sky should still be the same. They should still represent the same things that they represented in the real world, in that non-linear world of ours, before we ended up in this third dimension world of Aeternum.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then like my thought is that those obelisks were maybe put in a position, and let's just go through the names. So there's Orion. This is all Greek mythology, and these are the constellations of Greek mythology: Orion, Hydrus, Octans, Draco, Delphinus, and Cygnus. And those are some of those obelisks. My personal thought is that they are named and put in those positions because they are the closest to those constellations, and I personally think that those obelisks draw power from the constellations. Am I right? I don't know. Speculation.
Now, this one fascinates me. So I'll get kind of deep here. I think time matters in this game. I think there's something that we need to pay attention to. Time matters. If you look at the exploding shattered mountain, the exploding obelisk, right, in the middle of your map, the things are frozen in space. So time is a thing. Well, let's go back to as far back as, literature goes. The only way people monitored time and seasons was by the rotation of constellations. So where the constellations were at any given time was what season it was, right? Whether you have read the Bible or not, there's a lot of references about where constellations were, and that's how they were tracking where things happened, right? So constellations play a consistent, and that's key. It plays a consistent map of chronological order. And here we are frozen in that time. Nothing is changing. Nothing around you is changing from that standpoint. So if you I would be interested to know where those constellations are in Aeternum. I would love to go to an obelisk named, XYZ, look up and think, oh, well, there it is, right at nighttime. There it is.
And I looked and I couldn't make any out, but I love what you're saying, because what you're saying to me, and maybe the fact that people are uncovering some of the stuff, which maybe it ties to the fact that other people, other races of the world that were a factor at this time are coming to Aeternum. And what is one race in history, in the history of the world, that was incredibly tied to the constellations? Aztecs. The Aztecs built their structures based off of the best viewing angles to these constellations, because they truly believed that the world revolved around this static of time.
Right.
So I don't know if that's too deep, but I truly believe that in the future, the Aztecs are going to be a thing here.
Which, by the way, real quick, champ. By the way, if you ever want to know which player in the game is a Loreseeker, it's the one standing in a weird space looking up at the sky for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Those are the
Or the
Those are
guy standing,
Loreseekers.
or the guy standing in front of something, just standing there
Yeah, just standing there.
because we're
Sky-
recording.
That's
Yeah.
right.
What I think
yeah.
is nuts is a lot of civilizations were based around constellations, and that's the key too. The Egyptians.
Oh yeah, I knew that was coming.
Right?
Totally.
We just
Totally.
talked about the Greeks. Every one of your ancient mythologies ties some way, shape, or form to a type of constellation or using those said constellations. Again, tying it directly to our history and what our society and our world has grown from. Did the Aztec have ships? Neptune? I'll see you in game.
Aztecs and pirate alligators. I love that you guys are right with us on this stuff.
But it's
We are-
really cool.
We are so deep in our conversations, and then AGS releases pirate alligators. Like, we're very
Oh,
serious.
I love it.
Yeah.
You got to have some humor in there, right? We got to have the what was the little bitty things that in WoW that
Murlocs.
We got to have our Murlocs too.
Yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
that's right. The dung beetle that we talked about the other.
We
Oh,
do.
man,
They're
that thing
turkeys.
looked gnarly.
turkey.
Turkeys.
Peacocks. Remember? Look at all these
What's a
chickens.
peacock?
We don't need to talk about that. I don't know.
Something that gives Jibs nightmares, evidently.
I have one more thing I have to throw you guys' direction, and I would be absolutely remiss if we did not talk about this. What in the literal F are those orbs for?
I
Right.
have this theory that there is somehow, someplace, there's been more than one explosion. Like they have that obelisk that's exploded and frozen in time. I don't know. This maybe, I don't know when the shattered mountain shattered like that, but I'm thinking it could be a result of that.
What I think is crazy is to piggyback on that is they all seem like they're sunk in the earth or in Aeternum.
Right.
So that gives weight. And if you look at some of the obelisks, they have holes in it where these things would maybe sit. So I think we're on to something. I think we're starting to slowly figure out. But what was their symbolization? Why were they there? And what were they doing, right? What are they used for? Were they used to contain the power of the obelisk? Were they used to keep the obelisks from exploding? And whatever happened caused those to dislodge, in turn caused those to explode, which in turn stopped time. There's a lot of different ways you can look at it, but when you stand, where is it? Just north of Windsward, the city in Windsward, where all the obelisks there are. When you look at that, everything is frozen. But if everything was frozen, how did they fall to the earth? So there had to have been some movement at some point, and then everything froze. Maybe those round things are what kept the obelisks together. Maybe that's what the power flowed through. Notice the gold band around it and the different sides of it. Maybe that's what it was. And when they were kicked out of the obelisk, when they were ejected, the obelisk exploded, and then everything froze. So there had to be a time where they could have fell, or they'd still be stuck up in the air.
Right.
That's my opinion. Out of looking at these things for hours trying to figure something out, hoping I'll catch something that'll give me an indication of what they are.
Do you think
it's
they're
got me?
Do you think they're tied together, like the obelisks and the shattered mountain? Do you think that those?
Oh yeah, I think it's all tied together for sure.
Right. And how do we
Same
know
event.
that? Right. Well, how do we know these spheres weren't making the constellations above the obelisks? Maybe we should count the ones around the obelisks by name and see how many stars are in those constellations and try to find that. Maybe that's another way to look at it. Maybe they had a floating constellation above it. Since they're named after constellations, it's not a far cry to think that they had those hovering or sitting. And when the obelisk, I can't say that damn word, bro. I'm having JB time.
When the big balls.
Oh, come on, man.
The big old towers to kick the balls out. But what I'm saying is that point, maybe an event happened where those fell from the sky and that locked everything up.
It makes sense that they fell from the sky. Number one, because the larger ones are inset in the ground as if they fell from the sky.
Yes, sir.
Right.
It also makes sense that they could have been held in some sort of stasis, because look at what happened to the main tower. The main tower freaking blew its lid, and those particles are held in stasis. Like, they don't move. You look at it and they are completely still. Like something said, ouch, boom, hold on, stay right there.
Like
So there is obviously power when you're near that in Windsward, right? When you're near the tower, you feel the damn thrumming. We've written it into our lore lessons. You feel that damn thrumming in your chest, so you know you're in a place of power.
Right.
Yes.
Man, you just said something that kind of made me go way down a rabbit hole. But like maybe like, are you suggesting something or someone stopped the culmination of that explosion? Maybe the explosion happened and something or someone somewhere froze it in time.
Something more powerful. To stop an explosion, to stop stasis, to stop that power that just that had happened because of whatever caused it. The ancients doing their experimentations with Azoth, something happened that blew the top off that damn thing, launched those spheres into the air that freaking hit the ground, or unseated them from wherever they were perched.
Yeah.
Something stopped it all that has more power. And I guarantee you, if there is that something, it's still on Aeternum.
Could it have been the ancients that stopped it? And in their effort of freezing all of it in time, became frozen themselves.
Or wipe them all off the face of the island.
Right?
Because they knew maybe their evil was getting so, like, look at the corrupted. They become corrupted, and that's it. Like, you're corrupted. That is it. But the ancients were, theory time, ancients were experimenting so gnarly, so hardcore with Azoth that the Azoth started to sense there may be ill intention here, and it started to turn. And it started to drive them further into those experiments to where the island finally said enough.
Right.
Power overload, boom, everything blows. And the ancients had this moment of realization, but at the time had the power to say, stop, before we destroy everything. I don't know. It's far-fetched. Look, man, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I should be wearing a foil freaking hat. I don't know, but it'd be pretty damn cool.
Well, let's get you off the bridge and bring in something we do know. Lore page, Greenville and the temple, circles within circles. Maddie's words again prove true. The skeletons on the outskirts of the structure have small spheres, with markings much like the great spheres embedded in their chests. They were not posed as warnings. They seemed to have lived once, and I could see the trails they had worn in the stone and the temple perimeter, as if they had walked a circle about in countless times, yet simple one day stopped. I took one of the spheres for study.
I think she said chemtrails. She said chemtrails. I'm telling you! I told you! It's a conspiracy!
Can we get the guy we normally send to get his jacket put on and get his arms wrapped around his stomach?
Goodness, wrap those arms up. I think it
Come
goes.
on, you guys.
I think it goes without saying. After this being the final bit of our series on the ancients for now, that Aeternum has a whole lot of hidden secrets. One of those being what is actually alive within Aeternum. Things within the island itself that are not the ancients, that are not like human beings, or what was once human beings. Parts of this island, especially if you're reading lore pages, you will see things have come alive on their own. And so to kind of to wrap this up, it definitely says something, or speaks to something when you talk about the island freezing things in time. And it, also here as well, could have been a warning. I don't know. But ultimately, I can't wait to see how this develops in future DLCs. There is so much ahead of us. So much. And it's funny because sometimes you forget, when we're doing this week in, week out, just doing our thing, you forget it's only been out for 2 months.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been doing it for a long time, because we did a lot of, we obviously been in the game for a while, but
Yeah.
I feel like I've been in the game and then I'm reminded I am an infant.
Yeah.
Of
Just
lore.
getting started, man.
I'm an infant, man. I mean,
Yeah.
the things that we're talking about, I love coming back to shows like this a year later.
Yes.
And you know the answers, and you can see
Right.
how close you were, right?
Yep.
You can see, were you even close? Was it even a thing? Did you guess it right? Did you find what you were missing? Did you find that little piece that would have told you everything? Because it's out there.
Yeah.
I love this. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it.
My biggest worry My biggest worry, and I know this isn't going to be the case, my biggest worry is that the ancients turn, that mystery behind the ancients turn into what the Dwemer was in Elder Scrolls. Where you have, there's so much speculation, and you have Todd Howard like standing in some back room just flipping us off, going, ha ha, never gonna know.
If AGS, if you're
Please.
listening, please don't do that thing. Don't.
Yeah, but like the love for this, for what's going on right now, is the fact that the ancients are a mystery that we're trying to learn more about. At every single turn, there's something more interesting, something more mind-blowing about them. So folks, our series is not over on the ancients. We've just hit 3 good lore lessons on the ancients, and as more comes out, we're going to continue to deep dive into the story of them. We promise we will bring it to you. We want you to hit us up with questions about what plagues your mind in regards to the story, because there is so much here to uncover. Thank you, friends, for being with us for part 3 of the Ancients. More to come.